Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear me. Let me know in the chat. Today, we're going to talk productivity. All right, so we're going to talk about working online, particularly if you're working for yourself in some capacity, self-employed. Maybe you're working on a side hustle. A lot of people get started that way. That's what happened to me. And then I found myself self-employed / entrepreneur, which, wasn't really planning on. You kind of have to figure out how to structure your workday. So if you're working on projects that are somehow like self-directed, you have to figure out what to work on. You have to figure out when to work on things. You don't have deadlines specifically. It makes it a little bit tough. And then the other part, which I have, I found myself kind of not trapped, but in a situation where you get distracted. So we'll probably spend a little bit of time on that as well. If you want to sign up for like notifications for these, there's a link in the description. Just let you know before I go live. Sometimes YouTube doesn't send out the notifications or the emails in a timely manner, so you don't get them until later, which is not super helpful. So anyway, you can sign up for that. There's some other links in there, like a few notes about our sponsor, Odys Global, when you can get more information about that. And in a few minutes, I'll actually roll an ad to let my voice rest. I see we have Shujat and David is on as well. So thanks, folks, for hopping on here. And good news, I'm going to try and talk quieter. Good news, my voice is not only back, but I'm not coughing as much. I'll skip all the details. I still have cough drops and stuff here just in case, but generally things are much better, much better. And I will tell you this part. Hopefully, I'll be like hooking up with a speech therapist or someone who can help me speak differently, because I clearly keep losing my voice kind of on a semi-regular basis, which is a huge pain in the butt. I mean, just in general, for like normal people, like losing your voice would be a little bit annoying. But since I record many things and have a weekly live stream, it proves to be fairly problematic. So anyway, hopefully I'll be able to work with a speech therapist. Let me know if you've done the same. I think, most people are familiar with like speech therapy for like kids and stuff to help them maybe work through like a speech impediment or something, right? Various things. There's not as many people that go as adults, but I'm trying to go and figure out how to protect my voice. So I think people that are in a profession where they have to speak all the time, they probably end up going. So anyway, I'm going to be looking at that. All right. Susan says we don't need productivity. It's called passive for a reason. Teach us how to relax. Susan, you're exactly right. Funny thing is, I'm working on a book with my podcast co-host on Mile High Five, and it's about laziness. It's really like anti-productivity, but part of it is relaxing. So that is the focus. Funny enough, you end up looking at productivity things when you're writing about anti-productivity. So we're kind of splitting it up, working on it. We got Fruit Cat Bat on as well, who received the notification, which is great. Marcus is on as well. Cool. So if people have questions out there about productivity, maybe you have tips yourself, something that you find really helpful, go ahead, put it in the chat. I'll answer some questions. I'll probably try and hit some of the high points of productivity and how I view it. And to Susan's point, if you're really pretty driven, you end up working too much. You end up following these productivity tips. Maybe you're really good at that and you end up being very productive, but it turns out if you're not careful, all of a sudden more work shows up. Whether you're working at a job, for sure, more work is going to show up. If you say, hey, I have free time, I could work on other stuff, you're going to get more. So don't become too good at your job, because you're just going to have to do more of it. And if you're working for yourself, there's almost always more things that you can do. And it's very easy to get into the trap of doing more and more and more, or having like a to-do list that never ends. I'll talk about productivity for sure. But one thing, Susan, is I've realized, the to-do list will never end. There's always like more stuff that you can do, more things that you can optimize. And if you don't just stop, you end up just stressed out because it never ends. There will just be more things showing up. So one of the biggest challenges is to figure out what to work on and what's actually important, and then ignore other things. And it's really difficult for people to ignore things. But I've been getting really good at it lately, to the point where I'm just like, oh man, I should really do that. But I've like let it go, and I've gotten away with doing less for long enough that I realized that it's quite all right. And there's a lot of things that I thought were really important, and they're not really that important. Or if they are, it's like not important to me. Maybe it's important to someone else, but it's not important to me. All right. And Marcus says that you were just listening to the podcast with Olga where she was talking about productivity. It's been a little while since we recorded that, Marcus. What were some of the high points that you found with that conversation? All right. So let's look at, I actually made some notes ahead of time. So like I said, the main focus today will be for people working probably online, but the main common ground is you're working for yourself, or it's a side hustle and it's self-directed. So you don't have a boss telling you what to do. The biggest challenge is figuring out like what you should work on, and then like setting up deadlines, maybe not even deadlines, but like milestones so that you can march towards like some finish line, right? And in a sort of side hustle world, or a world where you're watching this and you consume other similar content, there's always like new things coming up, new tools, new techniques, things you have to keep up with. And it's like a never ending list of things that you have to keep up with. Or you could kind of stay focused, figure out what you need to work on and stay focused on that, kind of ignore all the noise. Because folks, if you don't know, most of it is just noise. Whether it's like on like a semi kind of like news situation where maybe like whatever, like the SEO roundtable like website where there's like new things all the time, or whether it's more like information / hopefully this is entertaining, or things like my show, or maybe niche pursuits, or maybe Alex's live streams or whatever. There's always just more content. There's more content, more things for you to worry about, and you're thinking, oh, I'm behind because this other person is using some other traffic source, right? Fill in the blank. It could be Pinterest, Reddit, Facebook. There's always some other shit where like someone's successful with it and you're like, oh, I need to do that too. One of the best things that you can do, this is probably the number one tip, figure out like the most important thing and then just focus on that and ignore all the noise that's out there. I often say I'm part of the problem. I mean, I'm producing content and stuff like that. And it's part of the problem because unfortunately, it makes you feel like you're behind when you hear that someone else is doing really well at something. And you're like, oh, they're using AI in a specific way, and they could publish like 1,200 articles in a few weeks, or whatever kind of new thing is out there, and you're like, oh no, I'm behind. And instead, you could just put on your blinders, ignore, like unsubscribe from all these email lists, stop watching so many, I'm shooting myself in the foot here. Stop watching so many YouTube videos, stop listening to podcasts. Maybe you can read some books, especially if they went through like a true publishing house, or at least a professional like editing sort of system, so that you don't end up with someone who wrote a book with like ChatGPT or Bard or something that's just like regurgitated stuff. But the hard part with all the content that's coming out is you don't know how to separate the important things from the unimportant things. So you just think, oh, everything's so important. So if you could figure out what to work on and then just work on that, you'll be so far ahead of many, many people. And if you pay attention to the subtext of many of the success story interviews, people are obsessed. They have a singular focus on whatever it is that they deemed is the most important. It could be Facebook. It could be Pinterest. It could be something else. Maybe it's just publishing content and working on the system that they have to work with the writers and the research and all that stuff. That's the thing. That's the common thing. People are only working on one thing, and they're ignoring everything else. Not always, but often people will just work on one site or one project. Sometimes, so Ariel is a good example. She had several sites that she was working on. When some of them showed promise, she focused on those. She was like whittling things down. And, it's worked really well. I need to catch up with her and do an update. I think one of her newer sites is doing really well through some of the things that I mentioned, where it's like AI content, publish a lot, like multiple monetization, like that works really well. All right. So let's hop back. Marcus gave us a little update here. So Marcus says, I have a few tasks in my quote current task list, and all the other ones are just in the backlog. I don't touch them until the rest get finished. Great. Marcus also says that Olga uses a Pomodoro Timer or something, and I'd like to give it a try. Cool. I'll talk about that in just a second. Marcus also says, I find it hard to understand that people use AI to push out hundreds of posts per week. Do they even read it at all? Most AI content needs to be rewritten/structured. I don't know. Everybody's doing it a little bit differently. My guess is they don't read it if they are pushing it out at that rate. At the same time, I think there's a gamble, right? That it doesn't need to be like rewritten or restructured depending on the inputs. I've played with some of I use the AI tools often for like kind of planning, outline and stuff like that. I'll give a use case that maybe could illustrate how someone could use it as just like something to speed up the workflow a little bit versus like publishing hundreds of articles. So this is a little bit different, but there could be some analogies here. So let's say I'm going to record a podcast on, let me make something up that's unrelated. Well, let's do the financial independence area, where it's just like, I want to plan how someone could pull together a budget. All right, I'm making this up on the fly. Pull together a budget, and maybe I have like 4 ideas in my head and a couple subtopics in there. So maybe I feed in like, hey, here's my little brainstorm. I want to have an outline on how a beginner can create a budget. I think these 3 points are important, and there's maybe 1 or 2 points for each one. I can say, give me an outline for a podcast where I cover this topic. The audience is beginners, and maybe they have like IT jobs, right? I can make it a little more specific. And then I could say, what other points do I need to put into the outline? Did I miss anything in the 3 points that I provided already? And then I end up with a pretty thorough outline. And if I added to it, maybe I put a couple other points, Marcus, maybe then I could say, hey, write section 1, section 2, section 3, and then it doesn't really have to be rewritten. And I've seen good enough content where I'm thinking I would publish that as is. Typically, like I said, I'm not publishing it anywhere, doing anything with it. If anything, I'll get like a podcast intro, something like that, but that's pretty rare as well. So, okay, and let's hop back. Susan says, I should have been more productive in 2014. Should have built more PBNs. Seriously. Yeah, Susan, that is exactly what I did in PBNs. A lot of us, or in 2014, we built PBNs. Many of us, I think all the way until probably like 2013 to 2015 or so. And then finally, it was just not working as well. All right, let's hit some of the productivity stuff as I'm jumping around here. Marcus mentioned that Olga, in an interview that I did with her, uses a Pomodoro Timer, which means tomato, I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, that's tomato. So basically the main idea, they prescribe like a specific amount of time. I want to say it's like work 23 minutes and take a 5-minute break. But the main idea here is to work for like a chunk of time and then take a regular break throughout the day. Some people, they're like, I want to work 30 minutes and take 5 minutes off. Some people are like 50 minutes and take a few minutes off, whatever. Pick it. I don't think it matters as much as long as you don't go beyond about, I think I've heard like 50 minutes to an hour or so. So like keep it smaller, do whatever you want. There's a couple things that happen because you have like a mini deadline. Parkinson's law kicks in, which is, I think, look it up out there, right? But Parkinson's law is like the work will expand to fit however much time you have given, or I think they've drawn analogies as well. And it's like the amount of stuff that you have will fill the amount of space. Like you'll just get shit until you fill the space up. So they've made that sort of analogy. Whatever the capacity is, like you'll use it up. So we could probably think of a time where we had 8 hours to do our job that day. It seemed like an impossible task, but somehow we worked it out and we finished what we thought was like 15 hours in 8 hours, and it was fine. Other times, somehow you've taken a task that should have taken 1 hour and you made it last 2 days. I'm pretty good at doing that. I can, you can make things take way too long. And the thing is, you just end up wasting time somehow. But when you have that short amount of time, like 22 minutes or 30 minutes, and you see the timer going, like you stay on task. When you get distracted, you get back on task. Highly effective. It works really well. I don't use it very often. I would say maybe like once a week. I end up setting like a timer on my watch, and I'm like, I'm going to work on something for like whatever, 15. Usually I do like 15 or 20 minutes. And it's because I'm about to do something else. And if I come down here and I'm like, oh, I'm going to do an outline for a podcast, then I may end up down here for like 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, I'll pick up the guitar behind me. It's a good way to expand how long it takes to do anything. But if I know I only have 15 minutes and the timer goes off and then I have to like go upstairs to like cook food or something like that, then it keeps me on target. So about once a week, I set a timer. I think, like I said, highly effective if you do this as a part of your workflow. All day long, you could do that. And some people, quick side note, I know that Andrew Huberman, he's talked about this. I haven't listened to many podcasts in the last probably like 3 weeks or so. Just hit and miss every now and then, maybe like one per week, not much. But I was listening to a lot of Huberman, and he often talks about like focus and like, chunks of work. And I want to say around 90 minutes is kind of like the ideal amount of time per many scientific studies. And I think he was saying like maybe one or two of those per day, maybe three. And that lines up pretty well when I think about very focused work and how much I could actually do during the day. I'm not talking about like sending emails or whatever, but I'm thinking, working really hard on a specific task or two. I got a couple chunks of work per day, and then my brain is fried. Got to do something else. All right, let's keep going through. We have Leather Art. What's up? And El Couch out of Arizona saying I sound much better. Thank you. I do sound much better. Marcus says for AI, maybe it's the specific niches, and you're not creating complete articles in 10 seconds. Okay, fair enough. Shujat says, so rewritten / structured AI articles or good to go? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on a number of factors. Some people would say no. Some people will say yes. Probably depends on the topic area, your inputs, how much information you're giving it, and your sort of quality threshold. So potentially. So it's basically the most unhelpful answer I can give, which is just part of the show. All right. Running through. Shujat says, what if we rely on AI articles for informational content? Can we? And you say, most of the time I do research, craft outlines, and then ask ChatGPT to write it for me. So the big thing here is you can do whatever you want. All right. No one gives a shit. You do whatever you want. You don't need my permission. You don't need Google's permission. You don't need anyone's permission. You're asking whether you should do that or not. And I think right now, the jury's out. Google says they're okay with AI content. Is that a waste of time? I don't know. Is it going to be good enough for you to publish and get traffic? Maybe, maybe not. And there's a good chance things are going to shift, right? So if you asked everyone like 1 year ago, the answer would be completely different than what it is now. Things are shifting fast. So not only for how good the tools are working and the number of tools, there's a ton of them out there now, but we don't know how the search engines, Google specifically, are going to react, right? So we have SGE, the search generative experience. Is that what that is? Is that what it is? And we don't know. Google may love the informational AI content so much they don't even send traffic because you're going to have the answer right there. So nobody knows. I know you're looking for a specific answer, but you can do it. Give it a shot. Let us know how it turns out. Okay. So architectural sheet metal, what's up? This is your time's limited, one of your favorite topics. Okay. And as we're scrolling down here. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about productivity before we go down the rabbit hole of AI, which it just happens, right? You mention it in passing, and then boom, that's all anyone talks about. Okay, another really awesome way, similar to the Pomodoro technique, is time blocking. So it's kind of an old concept, and I started using it after I read the book Deep Work by Cal Newport. That is an awesome book. Highly recommend that you check it out. Very quick read. Cal is a great communicator. Most likely, if you just wanted the short version, you could probably find a summary that hits the high points, and you could just spend half an hour studying the ideas. Time blocking, the main idea is to essentially like use a calendar and just block off like 30-minute increments of time. You could even do 15 minutes, but you end up with, I'll just kind of mock up a very small version of this. And you write what you're going to work on. Most people, myself included, if you would have told me this, I would say I don't want such a rigid plan. I need a little more flexibility. And if I make a plan, it's just going to get messed up anyway. That's true. The other thing that happens is you quickly realize that you are fucking terrible at estimating how long it takes you to do anything. Even if you think about how bad you are at estimating how long it takes to do something, you will still do a bad job. So what happens, so you create like a little grid. I just use a piece of paper, and you just write in what you're going to work on for those blocks. And the first week or two is going to be rough. You're going to be very wrong. You're going to be very behind. Something will happen, right? Either you end up just taking longer to do something. Maybe you get distracted and you're like, oh man, this really should have only taken 30 minutes, but it took an hour and a half. And I know it's because I got distracted. I remembered that I looked at my email and then I got distracted. Hopefully, once that happens a couple of times, you'll get back on track and you realize, oh, remember the time block. This is only supposed to take 30 minutes. I cannot look through this other stuff. I need to work on the task that I noted to work on at this time period. The other thing that happens, very likely, even if you're focused, you're on target, you know what to work on, someone's going to get in your way. Life's going to happen somehow. Georgie's sleeping behind me. Maybe your dog needs to go out and they're like, I really want to go for a walk. She almost never does, by the way. It's weird. She's the only dog I know that doesn't want to go on a walk. But something will happen, right? Your kid will have an upset stomach, and then you're going to have to go, take care of your kid, give them some ginger ale or whatever to make them feel a little better. And you are going to be at the mercy of life in the world. Maybe you do your time block and there's an appointment on there, and the dentist sends you into the office 30 minutes late, and it just messes up your schedule. So when that happens, it's okay. So number one, you'll get better at estimating, and you're like, oh, I said that this is going to take this amount of time, but I know that it actually takes longer. The other thing is, if it's outside of your control, you're just going to have to roll with it, because that's just what you have to do. So all you have to do, and Cal even writes it in the book, right? So you just draw another line and you do your updates over here. So whenever the schedule gets destroyed, you just correct it over here. And it turns out that's just what you have to do. You don't have a choice, right? So I don't have kids, but people with kids know, like, sometimes the whole day changes, right? You maybe had all these great plans, your kid's out sick, they're staying home, and you're not doing any of that stuff. You got to take care of your kid, right? So that's a higher priority, and you have to take care of it. Time blocking is great. Couch says you just did a search for time blocking calendar, and there's some good products out there. I think I need this. Give it a shot. It is really, really good. The other thing that happens is that you have this calendar and you're like, all right, I'm going to be really productive. I'm going to drink a giant coffee. I'm going to take nootropics, and I'm going to get so much stuff done. It's going to be amazing. I know exactly what to work on. I've done my research ahead of time. I am pumped. This is going to be fantastic. So you fill up your calendar, and you don't have any slack. Everything's full. Every single 30-minute block is full. You were smart enough to think, oh, I'm going to take a break. You were thinking, hey, I'm going to go for a walk or whatever between my Pomodoro sessions. I'm going to eat lunch. But there's some transition time that must occur. So you really can't go from like one thing to the next to the next. Some people with specific, with jobs out there that have like meeting after meeting after meeting, you know what I'm talking about. Like technically, nowadays you don't have to like go to office to the different meeting rooms. You just hop on a different call, whatever it is. And technically, you can go to whatever, 6 meetings in a day, all back to back. You can make it. You're not going to be late for them because you're just hopping on the video call or whatever. But there's some transition time in your brain. If you, drink a lot of water and stay hydrated, or maybe you drink a lot of coffee like me, you have to pee all the time. You have to take a break. So the other thing that you realize is you have to put slack in your schedule. And at first you're like, I'll give myself 15 minutes here to do whatever. The best days, and what you might end up doing if you keep using the time blocking, which is effective, you can keep using it, sort of indefinitely. And it does pair just fine with the Pomodoro technique, right? You could put these two together. Give yourself like a 2-hour block of nothing. Like do 1 or 2 big things per day, and then you just have an open schedule. And you may think, that's a little wasteful. Maybe you don't have that luxury, but that could be the goal. And this, Susan, think about this, right? So maybe you start with a side hustle, right? So you're doing this stuff on the side, you have the full-time job, you have limited time. We all have limited time, but you have extremely limited time because you have to do some dumb job for some company. But eventually you want to work for yourself and have a little more free time, that passive income. You don't want to be tied to your computer all day long. So what you can do is build in that slack and have like 1 big thing per day, maybe 2 if you're, kind of a ambitious person. But one thing that can happen, if you have a few other friends who are self-employed, have a free schedule, they may say, hey, you want to go ride bikes, right? Like we're kids again. Hey, you want to go ride bikes? You want to go grab lunch? Or I'm going to go for a hike. Do you want to come this afternoon? So if you have slack in your schedule, when someone is going to go do something fun, you could go do it. You could just go do it. Maybe you're the person that can say, hey, do you want to go ride a bike on Wednesday afternoon or whatever? So highly recommend that. And that is the anti-productivity stuff coming out. It's like you could just build in the slack and do fun stuff. Usually, if you have good friends, you have a better time hanging out with them than doing some other stuff. So I see Shujit says, give a tip on how to avoid social media. These tips are so good at distracting while working. Great question. What I'm going to do here, I'll tell a quick story that I'm not going to finish because I'm going to roll an ad in a second. Let my voice rest a little bit. But I was hopping over on Twitter the last couple days. I needed to send a message over to Ariel Phoenix. Just dropping names here, right? So I needed to send her a message, and I popped over there. And to your point, Shujit, sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing your name. I'll call you Ali. That's cool, right? Let me know what to call you. Write it phonetically. You can probably figure it out phonetically. And I'm only there for the direct messaging with Ariel. But I see the feed coming through. It's so distracting, and I get sucked in. I start looking, and it's a struggle for me too. But I do have some tips, which I'll answer in a second. Let's get this ad from Odys Global. I'm going to have some of the crew from Odys on a live stream coming up before too long. So we're trying to work on the schedule on that. My buddy Alex Drew. So that'll be coming up sometime, but I'll be right back. Brought to you by Odys Global, the source for premium age domains. They'll kickstart your website. Today, we're going to have a look at a site called storyofamerica.org. So this is a pretty cool domain. We're going to get into some of the details. However, if you're not interested in this domain, they have a great filtering and search mechanism where you can kind of hone in on the specific industry that you are looking for. So that is key, and you can always, hop over there and browse a lot. Like I said, today we're looking at Story of America, and all the Odys domains have a logo included. Usually they're pretty darn good. So you could have a look at some of the details here. So this is an 11-year-old domain, and it's kind of interesting. It was a documentary from what I gather, and it was about sort of the inequalities and just like the different sort of things going on in America. So we'll take a look over on the Wayback Machine as well as over on Ahrefs to see some of the high authority referring domains. So this was registered back in 2012, so it's 11 years old. Domain rating of 22. It's in English. We have referring domains in the 170 range, but we'll verify the specifics over on Ahrefs, and it has some pretty kick-ass links. So you can look here, some of the screen grabs from the Wayback Machine, but we'll just have a quick look over here at Ahrefs. So it is a domain rating of 28, which is pretty good. We have 148 referring domains, and then 107 do follow. We hop over here to check them out in order of the domain ranks. We have a Wikipedia, we have a Blogger, we have New York Times, we have a HuffPost, we have DevPost, Orange.com, Raw Story, Counterpunch.org, Washington Monthly, and a bunch of others that aren't quite as well known, but we're still in the 70s as far as the domain rating. So pretty amazing, pretty good in that regard. And this is a screen grab from June of 2014. So you can see it's a documentary kind of website. It was featured in the Washington Post, as noted right here. And the specific site says it's a web series and a feature documentary that explores the polarization that exists in America today along political, economic, and cultural lines. So kind of a serious topic area. And I think what you could do, you could have sort of like current events and news, a more modern take, right? Like the thing is with this topic, it's an evergreen topic. There's always going to be differences, polarizations, and many would argue that there's even more polarizing things now, politically, economically, culturally, and so on. So you could pick an area and just kind of hammer it down. The other good thing is there's no shortage of people that want to share their opinion. All right. They want to share their opinion a lot. So you can partner up with probably different creators, different writers, different influencers, or even pundits out there, and you would have tons of content that you necessarily don't have to write yourself. Monetizing through ad networks would be probably the way to go. I don't see a specific affiliate sort of play here, which is okay because you have such a huge amount of content that you could publish in the just informational and kind of news and general, I guess, political area. Again, there's so much political stuff going on. You could focus on the cultural. If you happen to have a site that is already dedicated to like the news area, you might be able to plug this one in. But otherwise, I think you could start it from scratch and go from there. So check it out. This is storyofamerica.org. If you join Odys using my affiliate link, you can get $100 in your account. And if you buy something, then I might get a commission, which I greatly appreciate. So thanks to Odys Global. All right. So when I left, we were talking a little bit about social media and how to deal with that. Shujat was asking how to avoid distractions, specifically from TikTok and Facebook. So, fortunately, neither one of those specifically get me. However, I use there's others that get me that are similar. So, the YouTube Shorts get me. They kind of suck. And then Facebook, I look on Instagram, it's the same thing. So a little bit different, but often similar. And then you got the reels over there. So there are a couple things that you can try. So number one, I think most likely with TikTok, you're probably not doing any research. You're not doing anything that is required for the work that you are doing. If you cannot trust yourself, which is fair, you potentially can put that app as something that you only have 10 minutes per day or whatever, so that you have to take some additional action. Basically, the apps are so good that you have to psychologically trick yourself to make it such a pain in the ass to get in there that you're like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. It's too much of a pain in the butt. I may as well just work on what I need to work on. So for me, I think it's I have a 5-minute time limit for Instagram each day. So sometimes I'm on there longer. I usually, I'm not doing research. I'm not comparing myself to others. It's not creating a negative psychological thing for me. Looking at guitars and food and beer, stuff like that. Dogs. The occasional cat sneaks in there, but it's usually good stuff. So I'm okay with that. Over on the YouTube short side, it's trying to act more like TikTok. So some additional bullshit shows up there that I'm not interested in. It is learning a little bit better, but there's still some extra garbage in there. So that one is something I'm just you know what? This is a waste of time. So I catch myself wasting time. But basically, you have to trick yourself. The other thing you can do, which is really effective, although occasionally a pain in the ass. So I work downstairs, but you could do the same thing. No matter where you're working, you're probably using your phone on it, and you're using those apps on your phone. Put the phone on the charger way far away, so it is a pain in the butt to get to. So I have a charger right here that I could put my phone on, but I get a lot more work done if I put it all the way upstairs, where, it'll take me 45 seconds to walk up there and back. Not a big deal. But that 45 seconds is enough where I'm not going to go up there to scroll through. There's some other tricks you could do. You could put your phone in black and white, right? You could put it in black and white, grayscale, so that your phone is far less interesting. Turn off notifications. I don't have any banners or notifications or anything like that. So when I look at my phone, I have to actively think, I want to check my email. There's not unread emails or anything like that. There's a couple apps that do have notifications or the banner showing, but it's like Trello, where 2 people have access to it. It's something that I need to know about. If someone, leaves a comment on my Trello board, it's my assistant or my podcast partner, and I need to see that. So basically you have to trick yourself to just not use those. So Shujat, do you have any tips for what you do? Obviously you're still working through it. All right. And Marcus says, put a timer on your most used apps, not only social media. Good point. Yeah. And the thing is, like, actually, I recorded a podcast episode with my partner over on Mile High Fi, and he said he forgot his phone when he was going for a hike. So he was going to be gone for like hours. He didn't know that he forgot it until he got to his location. And he was like, it was great. It was great. He didn't have his, people texting him. He didn't have like emails or other notifications going off. He was like, it was great. And one thing, I actually haven't been into Rocky Mountain National Park this season yet, but one of the great things is cell phone service is horrible. Once you get inside the park, there's big mountains and, there's not cell phone towers like inside the park, or there's not very many. If there are some, there's not many at all. So you go in there and you got nothing. You have 0 bars, no fucking connection, nothing. Very peaceful, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool when you don't have the connection there. So let's see. I have a couple other notes here. We talked about time blocking. Prioritization is another big. I talked about prioritizing things. So figuring out like what you need to work on. There are some things where you probably know, like these are the most important. Sometimes you may have to get some external help, maybe a mastermind group. Maybe you come to, or maybe you go to a conference or something like that, and you can like go to an expert, maybe who just spoke, and say, hey, I have like 6 things. I'm not sure what the top 2 most important things are. And then you can kind of narrow it down from there. So one other thing that we'll kind of wrap up on, and we will answer more questions and stuff. So if you have more questions, please ask. The other thing, and I'll pick on, I think it was Couch who mentioned this. You did a search for time blocking calendar, and there's some good products out there. So it's cool if you find something that you want to use, but we want to embrace technology. We want to find the app that will make us more productive. I was doing a coaching call, one-on-one coaching call with someone last week. And I was like, blah, 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 something about my Trello board, right? So I have I have another screen up there. I have my Trello board up there, and I use it for content management. And he was like, okay, I want to be more productive. And he was like, you mentioned Trello. Should I use Trello? What productivity tools do you recommend? And I was like, it doesn't matter, man. Like, you're focusing on the wrong part. I was like, get a notebook, use this scrap of paper. Post-it notes are really good because you can't write too much on there. Like, you're limited. You can't have a crazy to-do list. You could put like a couple things on there. That's it. And yeah, and architectural sheet metal says AI calendar apps, any good? The thing is, fuck all the tools. You don't need anything fancy at all. So I think everybody's really excited. I don't even know the tools anymore. I've like tapped out. You don't need all that shit. All right. Use a notebook. It's not connected. You're not going to have to watch like a fucking tutorial to figure out how to use it. So I was going to say, I don't even know the tools that are out there, but I watch productivity people, and they're like, oh, Notion this, Notion that. There's Airtable. There's some other shit. You might be able to do some things a little bit better, but if you have to watch a tutorial to figure out how to set up this stuff, you're going in the wrong direction. You're completely going in the wrong direction. You're dictating your process based on, and I would love it if people can challenge me on this. You can. I'm sure some people are like, Notion is great. I'm able to do all this stuff, and it's more organized, and it's great for my team or whatever. Or you could just not do that and use the most simple solution that you could possibly use. So for that coaching call, I said it much nicer, but I was like, hey, just use a notebook. You could use Trello, but you need to work on the shit, not the tool to help you work on it. You just need to work on the thing. Like, don't get distracted by this other stuff. So one of the things that I've been doing, I'm writing a book, right? It was really nightmare to get started, by the way. I haven't done a lot of writing here recently, so it was tough. What I decided to do as a bit of a productivity hack is I walk up to a Panera Bread close by, part of the SIP Club. Got that free promo. Look it up if you haven't checked it out. And I don't join the Wi-Fi there. And I use my phone as a hotspot, but I don't have a good connection, right? So I use my phone as a hotspot so that I can write in Google Docs and it just syncs up, right? I just want to make sure what I'm writing, I know it can work offline, but I just want to sync it up. And and the thing is, if I had a good internet connection, I would goof off. And I literally am forcing myself to do things in a sort of less technologically advanced way so that I can get the work done. Like, I don't need extra stuff. If I need to look something up, I'll just make a note, look up this study, like figure it out, right? Look it up later. So so and the thing is, like, I'm sure that some of those tools are great, and I literally have not touched Notion. But the thing is, like I said, the main idea is, like, if you have to watch tutorials to figure out how to use your productivity tool, then you should question everything. Why? Why are you doing that? Why? Fruit Cat Bat says, this is the quote of the week. You don't need a fucking tutorial to use a notepad and pen. Yes. It just removes a lot of the distraction, because what happens is you get caught up on how to set these things up. You get caught up on optimizing it. Here's one that I've committed all of these sins, by the way. This is why I can talk about it like this, I think. I was like, all right, I'm going to use a spreadsheet for some piece of work. I have a Trello board. I want Trello. I want Trello and the Google Sheet to talk to each other. So if I like change a status or change something on the Trello board, it'll update in Google Sheets and vice versa. It's doable, right? It's totally doable. And I was setting up all this stuff. Oh, my voice is starting to go. I'll be right back. All right, ask more questions out there if you have them. I know there's one I need to get to. I'm going to go back in the chat a little bit. I see Couch had a couple things there. Yeah, so I was setting up this all these zaps to update over on Zapier, to update stuff with a couple external systems so that I could have like a spreadsheet so that I could do like charts and stuff. And then I wanted to have Trello for the visualization. Spent like 3 days setting it up. Kind of worked, not really. And then things broke. And I was like, you know what? Just forget this. We're just doing the spreadsheet. It has what we need. The other stuff doesn't matter. I don't know why I was wasting all my time. So don't waste your time doing all that stuff. Would love it if people wanted to debate me. But when it comes down to it, I think most people are like, yeah, if you're working on setting up the systems versus like working on the stuff, you're probably focusing on the wrong part. Sure. And I'll argue with myself. Let's say I had a bigger team. Let's say I had several people working with me, and it was really important to have very clean communication channels, very clear statuses, so that Work was not duplicated. People knew who was working on what and when, and maybe there's some time sensitivity related to it. That's a lot of constraints, and I don't have those constraints. Usually a bigger team means things need to be a little bit tighter, but there's some, I've been part of some big teams that did not have any of those things that you described, or that I described, not you. And finally, when you think about some great things that people have accomplished in the past before we had all these technologies, even if it was only a few years ago, you really don't need to make it complicated. But that's part of the noise, right? People are like, oh, I set up this great productivity system using this and that and this other new fancy app. And, people are into it. I mean, those are really popular videos. It's a great way to, get some eyes on you, especially in the social media world, right? It's interesting new stuff. All right, let's get back to the chat. All right. Couch says, change of topic. Any plans for new niche lifestyle shows, Doug, WP Eagle, and niche website builders? You missed them. Someone mentioned that the other day, but I haven't heard anyone else say, hey, I missed the show. What did you guys like about the show? For me personally, I was like, I'm already doing a live stream each week. I think I was doing 2 live streams for a little while. And then that plus all my shows, I'm doing less shows now, so that does make a difference. But I was like, it's kind of the same. We're just doing multiple shows. All right. And El Couch says the Yellowstone, the falls are supposed to be amazing now. Yeah, I mean, we've been getting a ton of rain here. So I think they've probably been getting a lot of rain. And then they have all the snow melt too. So they're going to have probably some serious water moving. Marcus says, I do Infinity, which is a Trello alternative. Very good for prioritizing. And you have an overview of all the tasks. I would get lost without it. Yep. Find the simplest system. Use it. Don't make it too complicated. I use Trello, and it is very good for visualizing the various pieces of content that are out there, and it's super simple. I could train someone to use it in like 5 minutes. The system is very straightforward. Architectural says the root word of discipline is disciple, which comes from the Latin word meaning student. Most people believe a disciple is a follower. Okay. Got lost in there. Okay. And Couch says, now my calendar is the YouTube live stream paper calendar. I'm not trying. I made trying not to miss anyone. You have too many notifications, but schedules are hard to pin down. Yep. The notifications get a little, I had to turn those off. I was like, oh, I will turn on notifications. And then my phone was like buzzing all the time. And I was like, I don't need these notifications. This is nonsense. And I stopped telling people like, oh, turn on the notification. Okay. Marcus says, in my former job, we use Scrum, Agile methods, very time consuming stuff. Oh yeah. Yep. At the tail end, I was doing some Agile type stuff. Okay. I think that's it for today. We made it an hour. I didn't lose my voice. Things are solid. I'm trying to talk quieter. It's very helpful. Be sure to check out the links in the description. Thanks to Odys Global, and I buried it all the way at the end here. I do have a course on productivity. If you were interested in learning a little bit more, especially about notebooks and paper, you can check it out. Check out the other links too. I have an AI cheat sheet, there as well. and a couple other things. And I actually do take nootropics. That is accurate. I take it a few times a week. I take Thesis, and it's good stuff. I've been taking it for a few years. All right, so everybody have a good week. We'll catch you next time. If you haven't checked out the podcast, the link is in the description.